I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm not a grief counselor. I'm not an expert in youth mental health. Yet every day I find myself in a position of needing to offer insight and guidance to staff members working with youth in crisis. I am a school administrator, and unfortunately, anyone in a role like mine already knows exactly what I'm talking about. This school year marks my 22nd year in public education, spending the past 6 years serving as superintendent of schools. During that time, I've had to address an exponential growth in youth mental health concerns, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideations. I found myself on an unplanned crusade to combat these issues, a campaign that has led me to focus on the culture and climate of our schools and the development of the whole child. Yet despite that focus, I recently joined an undesirable group, a growing cohort of school leaders that have lost a student due to death by suicide. I've had to come to grips with the devastating reality that no matter what we have done to support student wellness and youth mental health, that a student died by suicide on my watch. Nothing in my career prepared me for this type of grief and sorrow. The pain that rises within a school community carries with it an unbearable weight, and yet we must bear it. A community grieves, families suffer, teachers and staff members mourn, students are left scared, grieving, asking why, mourning the loss of their friend and classmate. When a death occurs by suicide, a community is left with a void, a gaping hole with which there is no repair, no solution, no explanation, just pain, confusion, and sorrow. The thing that is different about a death by suicide is that the community is left with a vague sense of responsibility, the feeling that we, or I, could or should have done something different to prevent this. We ask ourselves questions. What did we miss? Why did this happen? Why did they leave us? With youth suicide, we often feel that it wouldn't have happened if we had taken better care of our student. Entering this profession, I never thought about this aspect of leadership. Never was there any discussion or training about how to support a school community in crisis. And through tragedy, I've had to learn structures and processes in place to support a community after the death of a student, staff member, or parent. Now let me provide you some context to define the current crisis. In the past 6 months, the county in which my district is located has lost 5 students due to death by suicide. 2 years ago, we lost an alumnus, a 19-year-old college freshman, and we lost a 14-year-old, an entering high school freshman, both whom died by suicide. This past school year, my school district had over 400 alerts on our web monitoring software that required some form of intervention. One such alert was for a student who scheduled his own death. You see, our students are in a constant state of social media curation, sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, and social and academic pressure. The issues our students are facing are dynamic and multidimensional. Mental health experts are supposed to know what to do. However, these experts often do not know the intricacies of the school district or community's culture. Expertise without context is incomplete. In my role, I have the context, and while I may not have been trained in the same way as these experts, my school community still comes to me for answers, and I do not get to opt out of my responsibility to my community, and decisions must be made. When tragedy befalls your community, you need to know the questions to ask. I've had to learn how to respond. You have to know whom to seek guidance from. What steps will you take? Who do you call for support? Do you have a crisis team in place? Do you have a plan for tragic loss? Have you fostered relationships with mental health providers and caregivers? How do you set up a crisis center? How should you communicate to your community? How do you speak to the parents who have just lost their child, to the father who just lost his daughter, to the mother who just lost her son? What do you say? Through tragic loss, what I've learned is the very act of navigating crisis serves to develop one's expertise. Learning from those that have experienced and navigating crisis is paramount. In my experience, I've discovered some things that I didn't know before because navigating school crisis was never part of any formal training that I'd received. Here are some things I have discovered. A school leader must think fast but slow down. There are important and decisive decisions that must be made. So you need to gather your team, gather your resources, and gather your thoughts so you can make the most informed decision possible with the information you have available. In that vein, it's important that school leaders have a plan in place before a tragedy occurs. Having a team in place and having a plan will only lead to a more successful response. We must remember that we're never alone in moments of crisis. It's important that during a crisis response that we take care of our caregivers. Often the crisis team is comprised of our own staff. It's important to bring in outside support, bring in counselors to support the counselors, and to have enough support that the caregivers can rotate out. Oversight and guidance is needed to protect your team. Additionally, it's important to know that during a tragedy, that the leadership will be imperfect. As a school leader, you're supposed to have the answers. You're supposed to have answers to questions no one else has to think about. And I've made my share of mistakes in tragedy and crisis. And it's easy to be myopic in thinking. For example, in addressing a tragedy in one school building, I did not think through the impacts across the greater system. While we messaged the district faculty about the death of the student, we did not intentionally identify the teachers that had taught the student and their siblings in other buildings. By not identifying those most affected, we failed to mitigate some potential impact. Through tragedy, I've learned that there is a fundamental difference between focusing on school culture and climate and responding to a school tragedy. We must recognize that no matter how hard we focus on school culture and climate, tragedy may still occur. So our responsibility, as school administrators, as educators, is to recognize while there are so many things we cannot control, we must focus on the things that we can control. Now, using the mantra, "on my watch," has served me as a tool and reminder for our collective responsibility in both our response and the systems we permit and promote in our schools. While I cannot control everything that occurs, on my watch, we will prioritize creating a culture of care in our schools. We will focus on the development of the whole child. We will place structures in place to identify students in crisis. We will ensure that we educate students and staff members alike around warning signs and risk factors for suicidal ideations and mental health. We will emphasize the importance of self-care. We will build partnerships with teachers, counselors, administrators, students, and parents. We will build partnerships with mental health providers, local physicians, and university partners. On my watch, every student is going to be known by a caring adult. We must pledge that on our watch, we can create a community of care in our organizations. We must commit to placing an intentional focus on teen depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideations. Our children are depending on us.